Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the DE podcast. I'm joined by Ekamresh, and we have a very special guest. You guys might recognize him from earlier episodes, but we have Mitchell Stevens, the Detroit fan himself, in the building. And, today we have a very big conversation. We're talking about the finals, of course. We have the series tied up at 2-2, and we have so many exciting things to talk about. Just before we begin, I was wondering, who are you guys cheering for in the finals overall?
For me, I'm going Celtics. I just don't like. I don't want Steph to have the same number of rings as LeBron. So Celtics for me.
Yeah, I like Boston. I like Jason Tatum. I think he's one of my favorite young players in the league, and for him to get a ring now would really kickstart his path to stardom in the league.
Yeah, I'm also cheering for the Celtics. I just think it would be cool for Boston to win because I feel bad for them after all these years they keep losing, even though they had good teams. But just a little rundown of the finals. We'll go game by game. So the series is obviously tied up at 2-2. We had game 5 in San Francisco on Monday night. So the Celtics did take game 1 in an upset. The Warriors led by 12 to start the fourth quarter, and Boston somehow came back and they went on a big run. They outscored the Warriors 40-16 in the fourth quarter alone. You had Al Horford, who scored 26, Derek White with 21, and Jaylen Brown with 24. And although Jason Tatum had a bad shooting night, Boston was still able to win the game. And then game 2, you had Golden State come out, blowout win. Steph Curry played pretty well with 29 points. Jordan Poole behind him. And then Jason Tatum did score well, but then you had Horford, White, and Brown, who all struggled despite their strong performances. So it kind of gave us a little outlook on how, the series can really change. And then game 3 is a blowout in the Celtics' favor. Steph Curry scored 31. Boston led for most of the game. They had a strong third quarter with the Warriors to cut the lead to 4. But Boston did have a good fourth quarter, and they won by 16. Tatum, Brown, and Smart all scored 20 plus, showing their big 3 caliber. And then Draymond Green continues to struggle in the entire series. And just last night in game 4, you had Steph Curry, who dropped 43 points. And he had a really clutch fourth quarter performance. And the Celtics were up 97-93 with about 2 minutes left. The Warriors go on a 14-0 run, I believe, to finish the game. And then Draymond Green is not performing well this entire series. He has 15 points and he has 18 fouls. Which is not very good for Draymond when you're expecting more from him. So I think before we kind of talk about the overall series, like, what do you think needs to happen from both teams? I mean, obviously we had the Celtics win, the Warriors win, the Celtics win, the Warriors win. So it was kind of alternating and different things happen in each game. So what do you think both teams need to do specifically in order to win?
For me, at least, for the Celtics side, they definitely need to get the ball into the paint. I think John talked about it on the last podcast too, but the Celtics have like 2 really solid big men, Al Horford and Robert Williams, who are really big paint presence both defensively and offensively. And meanwhile, for the Warriors, they're a lot smaller. They play Draymond at the 5, Kevin Looney is usually their center. So they're not very big. So if the Celtics can go back to getting a lot of paint points, winning the rebound battle, then I definitely think that they should have this series in the bag. Like if you saw game 1, Al Horford was scoring 26 points. They won the rebound battle by like 10 rebounds, I believe, in game 1. Game 3, similar story. They blew them out. They scored I think over 60 points in the paint or something. So just overall, if the Celtics are bringing the ball to the rim and attacking that Golden State defense, then I think that they should be able to get the result they want. And for the Warriors, I think, honestly, if Clay can start to produce again at a somewhat higher level, then they should be pretty good too.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, with the momentum that seems to be swinging back and forth like a pendulum here, going game for game, going into this 5th game, we've seen, I mean, obviously the highlights here, especially like with the Warriors, they've been just pretty much letting Steph cook, and it seems to have been working on and off, and it's more just kind of focusing on what's accompanying him and, what pieces have fallen off and what pieces have been able to step up. And obviously, if you look at Draymond's been a piece that, everybody's been talking about. He's been sloppy. He has not been himself. And despite that, they've been able to win 2 of these games. And you just wonder how different this could be if he comes into his own here later down the stretch. As for Boston, it seems that they've been held to under 100 points twice so far. It seems that they just haven't been able to really click. And you were talking about, points in the paint. If they can just rely on I guess that you can call that their bread and butter with old reliable Al Horford, pretty much reiterating a lot of what X said and just kind of, just leaning on their strengths.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I mean, we've seen how like role players can really change the game because, like, for example, in game 1, you had Tatum, who did not shoot well at all. I think he scored only like 10 points that game. But then you had, Horford, Derek White, Jaylen Brown, all those guys who played well and they still managed to win. So it kind of shows that, I think both teams have those type of teams where, even if your starter doesn't play well, it doesn't mean you're going to lose. I think there's several teams in that have that case where if your star player doesn't play well, you're going to lose. Like those teams where you have one guy who leads a team like LeBron and the Lakers, for example, maybe. But, I think with the Warriors, if Curry doesn't play well, even though he's playing well, practically the whole series, Draymond Green is not playing well, which is obviously a liability. And then Klay Thompson he's not playing bad, but he's playing average. So especially in the finals where it's for a championship, it's for everything you've worked for, they really need to step up. And then Jordan Poole actually not playing bad at all. So I think both teams have quite the potential to go and play well. And also the Warriors are one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the NBA. You can't forget that. You have Steph, Clay, Jordan Poole. Like I can name probably 4 or 5 guys, and you have to, the Celtics, they need to have good perimeter defense to guard them. And then Steph Curry has been relying on so many of their forwards like Andrew Wiggins, Jonathan Kuminga, Kevon Looney, where Curry always drives down, does an easy pass to them, and they dunk. So definitely the Celtics need to have some good interior defense as well. And the Celtics are one of the best defense. So it's kind of like it's kind of a coincidence. You have the Warriors, one of the best shooting teams in the NBA, and then the Celtics, one of the best defensive teams in the NBA. So it's kind of seeing, can the Celtics translate their defense to offense as well, and then the Warriors translate their 3-point shooting into defense. That's what I think. And everyone's playing well. Just to go over a few of the series stats, you have Tatum averaging just over 22 points per game. I'm not going to go over everything, but shooting pretty decent. Jaylen Brown. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, and I wanted to ask you guys about this because I'm just curious. So Jaylen Brown. I don't know if you guys have watched every game of the finals, but I have. He's played well every single first quarter. You've seen him score 15 plus points.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah. So, and he hasn't been scoring in those other quarters. Why do you guys think it? Do you think the Warriors are trying to double team him, contain him? Why don't you guys think that he's trying to translate his first quarter scoring into other quarters?
I think it's just simply because as the game progresses, the entire court just closes down. So the pace is much slower in the fourth quarter as opposed to the first quarter. So I think that Jaylen Brown is at his best when he's getting in transition, when he's getting buckets from ball movement and stuff like that. I don't think isolation plays are really his speciality. So I think it's just the game slowing down and kind of becoming less of a transition game over the course of the game, I would say.
Yeah, and I guess you can attribute that to a bit of maybe a lack of playoff experience. Maybe he's not used to just such a high caliber, maybe on the other side of the court. And, he might be a little bit fatigued going into those later quarters, maybe not accustomed to it. And maybe that seems like a bit of a reach. He is a younger player in this league, but he plays already like he's, one of the top talents. And you'd think it could be, lack of NBA playoff experience, perhaps.
Yeah.
He does have one of the highest plus minuses, though, in the tournament so far in the NBA playoffs, just as a whole. Him and Andrew Wiggins, actually.
Yeah. No, that makes sense because experience plays a big part. I mean, I think even with like we mentioned before, with Clay and Draymond not performing as well, especially in like game 5, 6, and 7, the Warriors have played plenty of game 5s and 6s, like in 2015, 2016, 2017 and 18, they did win pretty easily, but then 2019 against the Raptors, then, you know, obviously this series and early season. So I think the Warriors know, and I saw Curry say it in his interview, like the Warriors have the experience to kind of back up, how they're going to play in games 5, 6, and 7, and they can deal with the pressure and they know how to execute. So, in my opinion, I mean, Ake, and John, in the last podcast, we said that the Warriors are going to win in 6. I think my prediction will still stand on that. I don't know about you, Ekamresh, but I definitely still think Warriors in 6. Yeah, that's what I think. But
I'd probably go Warriors in 6 still. I feel like just with how well Steph Curry's playing, I think he'll get the job done.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think the Celtics are gonna, try to find ways to reap. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a game. It could be game 5 or game 6 where the Celtics go up early. But then the Warriors are like the best third quarter team in the league. The Celtics could either be a really good fourth quarter team or a bad fourth quarter team. We saw it yesterday in game 4 where they weren't a good fourth quarter team, and we saw in game 1 where they were a good fourth quarter team. So you never know what could happen in the fourth quarter, because you've had Curry play well and not play at the same time. But yeah, so Steph Curry's averaging a lot of points, 34.3 points per game, shooting very well, 50% overall, and then 49 from the 3-point line. So one question for you guys, and who is your finals MVP as of right now? So not just one finals MVP overall, but I'm going to say one per every team since the series is tied up at 2 games all.
Good question. Okay, well, I feel like for the Warriors, me and Mitch, we're both going to say Curry, obviously, because
yeah, I mean it's pretty straightforward. You can look at his stat lines. You can look at how he's dictated the pace of the game, and it's
yeah. And then for the Celtics, I feel like it's harder though, because you have Tatum, who is your number one option. He's supposed to be your star player, but Jaylen Brown is pretty much having as good a series as Tatum, really, up to this point. They're both averaging the same number of points. Tatum is averaging about double the assists and almost double the rebounds, but everything else is pretty even.
Yeah.
So I'd probably give it to Tatum still. But overall, I think for the Celtics, it's going to be whoever has that big closeout game. I feel like if Jaylen Brown, if they're in a game 6, game 7, and Jaylen Brown is the one who goes off for 35, 40 points and wins them the series, I think he'll get it. And if it's Tatum, then Tatum will get it probably.
Yeah, because the stats are so identical. Like Tatum and Brown are both averaging 22.3 points, 7 rebounds. Now, I don't know how many assists Jaylen's averaging. But then shooting wise, they're also Jaylen Brown is shooting 10% better than Tatum. But yeah, I would say as of right now, Tatum. But then if you go later in the series, it does like what you said, Ekamresh. It depends on who can do well in those closing out games. But what do you guys think about? I just wanted to give your overall thoughts because I've seen it on social media. Draymond Green, obviously, he's struggling. He's playing terrible. But what are your thoughts on him on social media, on his podcast, talking about people saying that he's not focused and all that? Do you think it's it's true? He's not really he's not putting his full focus in the finals and not to other stuff, or do you think it's just all rumors?
I mean, you could think that maybe he's getting complacent. This isn't his first time here. Maybe he isn't treating it nearly as much of nearly as special as maybe a lot of the Celtics players are on the other side of the ball. You could definitely think about that, or you could just think about that. Maybe I don't know. It's just kind of his personality, and I feel like it was inevitable that he was going to get into this situation at some point. And I think he's been taking it well outside. He's able to laugh at himself, but you really start to question, there's being able to look at what you're doing on the court and not let it kind of define you. But then again, this is an NBA championship. This is, this is not only important to your teammates, but also to your city. And it's like, when do you have to also hold yourself accountable for that? So,
Right.
I'm not sure what to think of it.
Yeah. And then
I personally I feel like he's I think he's too invested in what's going on, what everybody's saying about him. Because if you just think about it, why does he need to respond to CJ McCollum or these journalists or anybody? Why does he need to trash them? They could say whatever they want. I mean, it's just part of the game. It's kind of what happens. And especially considering how he's averaging 2 points per game in the finals. I think considering how he's playing, he should really just try and focus on the game itself, tune out all distractions, and not really worry about what people are going to say about him. Because if they lose this series, he's only going to get trashed even more. So I think he should just try and focus on the game as opposed to what's going on around it.
right. And I think many people's opinions are changing on Draymond. I mean, actually mine even. Because I used to kind of like the Warriors a little bit. I guess I can say that Curry is my favorite player. I really liked them back in maybe 2015, 2016, when they started winning some games, and they were the first team that I ever watched and all that. So, I mean, Draymond Green, I kind of lost respect for him in a way. I don't know about you guys, but if you guys just watch the highlights of the game and you see his physicality, it's almost like a football game. He's doing too much, and I think he's just trying to make it personal with all the Celtics players when it's just an NBA Finals. I mean, okay, yes, there is a championship at stake, which is humongous, and you worked for it. But at the end of the day, it's basketball. There's so many things that are more important than basketball, and you cannot just go in and be so, I don't know what the word is, not vicious. That's taking it too far, but physical. I mean, you saw him getting into an argument with Jaylen Brown, almost pulling down his pants. I mean, him and Grant Williams trash talking. He's doing so many unnecessary things. It's funny and kind of just disappointing. So I was questioning on who I was cheering for at the beginning of the series, but now I think I'm leaning more towards Boston just because of that. But yeah, I mean, I think that one other thing that kind of stood out about the game is that none of the games have been decided by less than 10 points. So, I mean, I think on my opinion, Ekamresh's opinion, it seems to be because the 3-point shooting on the other side is unbalanced. So I'll ask Ekamresh first because you're the one who actually tried to make the question. Is the 3-point shot ruining basketball nowadays, considering how many threes are taken a game?
Well, I just wrote that because I was just thinking I was looking through the shooting of both teams, and usually whoever shot way worse from three in the game was the one who lost in this finals so far. So I was just I was thinking about how at least all these games, they've just been blowouts, and I mean, effectively, it's the games have been 12, then 30 or something, 20, then 16, and then 10. There hasn't been a close nail-biting game yet. I think the closest one was yesterday night, obviously. But usually it's because one team will get hot from the three. They'll make 5 or 6 threes in a row, and that'll build them a 10, 15-point lead. And then the rest of the game is just the other team trying to chip away at that and try and get somewhere. And in this series so far, the team that's gone down has not been able to do that. So I was just thinking about, is the way basketball is played where the three is essentially the most important shot. You're going for threes. You're not really shooting any mid-range. You're really emphasizing that 3-point shot. Is that the way to go? Do you think that's good for the game, or I don't know? Just what are your guys' thoughts on that?
I mean, I don't know, because the NBA Finals has shifted. You're exactly right. Game 1, the Celtics make 5, 6 threes in a row. They go up by 14, and I guess that's the game. Yesterday, Steph Curry makes all his threes. The Celtics do get those looks. In my opinion, I was kind of looking at last night, I was looking at the game 1 highlights versus the game 4 highlights. The Celtics were getting similar looks from 3-point like they did in game 1 yesterday, but they just made everything in game 1 and they missed everything yesterday. So I don't know if it's ruining basketball. But again, when you said that there are no nail-biting games, I think that every single game has been pretty close. If you look at the end of the third quarter, for each game, it's been relatively close. I just think that each team, yeah, like the 3-point shooting, I think has like determined most of the games. That's what I think.
I guess if like you try and think about what exactly can happen in the future, where the NBA can go with this whole 3-point dilemma, and I guess the consideration that I've heard the most is obviously like maybe moving the 3-point line back, but then again, range is also something that, I mean, you've seen guys taking threes from well outside that line. Where's it come to a point where, like, regardless of where you move that line, the players are just going to adapt. And I think whatever happens, whatever they do, they're going to adapt. The athletes today are better than they ever have been, and they're only going to get better. And, then it raises the question of, obviously, do you get rid of it? I don't think that's going to be met with, quite the best approval. But then again, where do you keep going? And I think you're gonna have to look a few more years down the line to be able to get a definitive answer of how of how things are necessarily going to be changed by the 3-point granted. We've already had it for over, what was it, like almost 50 years we've had it. But then again, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's really defined it because let's just look at the greatest highlights in basketball. All those game winners. For example, the Damian Lillard shot, 3-pointer. The Kawhi Leonard, like, amazing shot, 3-pointer. Like, like, I don't know, even the NBA Finals, like Kevin Durant's clutch shots, 3-pointers. Like 2019, like in game 2, 5, like 3-pointers. So I think, the 3-pointers have just affected the game so much. And I think that especially if you're down 3, like imagine if there was no 3-point line, you would automatically have to make two twos in order to win, when you could just make 1 3-pointer and it's tie game, right? So I don't think it's ruining the game, but I think it's making it better. But again, there are so many slumps. I mean, I've seen so many highlights of NBA players practicing. They're making all their threes, that from what I see, or maybe it's just for the camera. I don't think it's for the camera. I think they're actually just making them. But I think in game, it's just more pressure. You're playing, like, imagine you're on a stadium above you. There's like 20,000 people. Like I would be pretty nerve-wracking if I was there. So, but yeah, I don't think that we've seen too many games where it's been slumps. Like I don't think it's been like shooting. I think it's been more like runs, right? Like game 1, it's not like the Warriors shot bad, right? The Celtics just made so many big runs and they played good defense.
Unless you watch, in which case you will go quarters without seeing a three.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, I think that's enough on the NBA Finals. I mean, Game 5 is Monday.
I have one more question actually about the finals.
Okay.
I was wondering, so let's say it's Steph Curry. Let's say our predictions are right. The Warriors win in 6, or 7, either one. Steph Curry gets his Finals MVP. Do you think that he is going to be a top 10 player of all time?
Yeah.
I think when you take over an entire 6-game series in that fashion, and then win that Finals MVP, you're adding 2 significant pieces of hardware to an already stellar resume. And I think at that point you just have to fold and give him the credit.
Yeah, for me, Steph Curry, I mean, look at his career, right? He has 3 rings. Yeah, 3 rings. No Finals MVP. He has 3 rings. He has 2 MVPs. He broke the all-time 3-point shooting record. And I mean, I can imagine how old is he? He's like 34 now. He's probably going to play for 4 or 5 more years. He's going to score plenty more 3-pointers. So I think that it'll be really hard for somebody to break his record. And I think the closest current player right now is James Harden. And I think James Harden is just a little bit older than Steph. So I think that James Harden won't be able to pass Steph. And then if Steph wins, he has 4 titles. He does have 1 Finals MVP. So compared to, like, I don't know, what's a top 10 player? Like, I don't know, like Magic Johnson, Larry Bird. I think Steph Curry has his right, because if you look at the guards, Magic Johnson may be the close, like Magic Johnson. I mean, there's Reggie Miller, but everyone's saying Curry's already above Reggie Miller. which I think I agree with, but you have Magic Johnson and then other guard. I don't even know any other guard. Oh, Michael Jordan's a guard. Okay, fine. We can consider Michael Jordan a guard. Michael Jordan is better, obviously, but I think Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, and Kobe, like Steph Curry. I don't know if he could be. Like, what do you guys think? Like, if Steph Curry wins, would he be added to the mix of like Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, and Kobe, or do you think he's still kind of far away and he needs something even more to be in those discussions?
Well, I think that also begs the question of like, how much do we value the 3-point shot in someone's career? He's become the best
Sure.
3-point shooter of all time. And you've got to ask the question, how valuable is that, like, as part of your resume compared to like a lot of the guys who played in, the early stages of that, who don't have that as part of their resume. And I think that, as we've been saying, the game is growing and adapting, and the 3-point shot has been ingrained into the game. And now that Steph Curry has mastered it, I think you have to hold that to a higher record, because he's playing with, in an era with a lot of other players who have also gotten so, accustomed and so good at shooting that 3 ball. And he's just taken it to a whole nother level. And, you got to look at some of the athletes before him who, they were playing with great players like MJ. He was playing with a lot of legends himself, but he was at a whole nother level in his own respect. So I guess you've got two masters of their craft who took a part of the game and elevated it. And, you got to, I guess, now ask the question, which one do you value more?
Yeah, I think for me, I put him in top 10 just because of the hardware itself, but also, at least for me, when talking about like the greatest players, I think impact does have its own category, and just because of the fact that he changed the game so much, like you shoot threes because of Curry, because of what he did in 2015, 2014. Like you say Curry when you pull up from three. So because of that, like because of how he essentially changed the way the NBA thought about shooting the three. I wouldn't say like changed it, but he accelerated it to becoming a league that's almost based on getting open 3-point shots. I think that along with all of his resume, I think that's what boosts him into top 10. I think that you could have discussions about him being on the same level, if not better, than like Tim Duncan, maybe. I think you also have to think about like he's going to be playing at this level. Let's say at least another 2 years. So he's going to get his All-Star. He's going to get his All-NBA.
By the way, he's 34.
Yeah, I think about
actually 32.
Yeah,
I think like 2 more years is not unreasonable for him to be playing at this level. Considering how he hasn't really slowed down so far, I don't think he's going to be like LeBron playing at 38 years old. But I think that he'll definitely have some high All-Star, All-NBA level left into him. So I think he'll get the All-Star appearances. He'll get the All-NBA recognition. He will probably get all those things. And I think at the end of the day, when you look at his resume, when he retires, I think he'll be solidly like top 8, top 7.
Yeah.
As a minimum.
Like, I mean, I don't know when you guys play basketball, but like everyone kind of has names of great player when they shoot. Like like a fadeaway could be Kobe. Now if Curry's a 3-point shot, LeBron or Michael Jordan could be like Michael Jordan could be anything, but like LeBron's probably like a dunk or a mid range or something. I don't know, but like everyone kind of has their own special shot, and obviously Steph Curry. I think without Steph Curry, there's no really. I mean, I guess you can say that Damian Lillard is like a good 3-point shooter. I mean, he is obviously, but like Steph Curry really changed it, like for all time, like everybody. Like he's made like 3,000 threes. Like it's crazy. So, I mean, I definitely think that he's changed it, and I think he deserves to be in the top 10. But yeah, guys. So I think moving on from the NBA Finals and all this, I think we can move on to there's 3 things I wanted to talk about other than the NBA Finals. We had Warriors assistant Kenny Atkinson. He was hired the head coach of the Charlotte Hornets. So what do you guys think about that? Because I'm thinking who could be LaMelo Ball's new mentor going into next season. And it looks like Kenny Atkinson will be his new coach. What do you guys think about that?
I think it's good. It's good because Kenny Atkinson in Brooklyn, when he was last coach, he was known for his player development and his youth development. So having him there to develop guys like LaMelo, like Miles Bridges, PJ Washington, and essentially their entire young core, I think that's going to be great for the Hornets. But I think one thing that the Hornets shouldn't do is like place some crazy expectations on them, like, oh, we expect you to get to the playoffs or something immediately. I think they should just give him some time, and then he'll hopefully produce. But I think it's a good hire, and definitely better than their last coach.
Yeah, I think you could really call it kind of the final piece of this like long-standing rebuild. And like Ekamresh was saying, you've got to limit your expectations, and you got to realize that, you know, if it is the last piece, it's not going to be the end-all, be-all. You still have to make sure that everything fits together, and you've got to make sure that he's the right guy. Because if everything looks good on paper, you have to at least give it a season to make sure that, you know, things are actually going to gel kind of like in person. Is he going to gel with the locker room? Is he going to gel with the rest of his staff? And, you know, you could look at his history and say, well, I think that it's a given that, you know, things are going to go well, and this is going to be the guy that we think he is. But I think you've got to give it, you're going to need a better sample size than just kind of like what we've seen and what his resume pretty much is projecting for him.
Yep. Yeah, I definitely agree on that. And, you know, being around many Hornets fans every day, living in Charlotte, hopefully we can win something. So I don't come to school every day and everyone's sad. So, but the NBA draft is coming up this summer. Obviously, we have a ton of really good guys coming out of college that are going to play for NBA teams. So who is your top 3 mock draft predictions? I don't know if you guys, I mean, I can imagine you guys probably follow some college basketball. I'm personally not a big fan, but I am aware of the big names. But who do you guys think is going to be like top 3 in the draft?
Jabari Smith. Jabari Smith is one of my favorite prospects in the entire, you know, in the entire draft process. In the entire draft process, you look at his measurables, you look at his ability to, like you're saying, shoot the 3, which is obviously the huge part of this, you know, this day and age. And he is going to, I would say he's probably the most NBA ready, certainly more, I would say, than a Chet Holmgren, which a lot of people have had, you know, some flip-flopping opinions on regarding his size and his build, as well as his, I think his defensive prowess is not something that you can ignore, and having somebody that size certainly helps. It's certainly a lot more common in today's game, and people are calling him kind of like a bit of a unicorn, and I feel like that's placing a bit too much on him. I feel like he could still be a top 3, top 5 talent, but if he doesn't like perform nearly to that to the standard that's been placed upon him, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised, and I personally would pick a player like Jabari Smith or Paolo Banchero over the likes of him, although I would still consider that part of my top 3, along with guys like maybe, I guess, Duke's AJ Griffin. You could also include Jalen Duren. You could include Benedict Mathurin up there in kind of like the top 10, a lot of the top guards, which includes Keegan Murray, another forward. You can include Jaden Ivey out of Purdue. I mean, I would say there's a good kind of like good distribution of talent across the floor available to these teams. And I'm strictly thinking from a Detroit perspective, unfortunately, going down to the 7th pick. But, you know, I think it's a lot deeper than a lot of people give it credit for. And I think there's more outside of them, those top 3 names.
Yeah, I think honestly, even though the Magic have the number 1 pick, I think it's actually hardest for them to make a decision on what they're going to do, because at least for the teams below them, Thunder and I forget who has the 3rd pick off the top of my head, but the 2 teams below them, like whoever the Magic select, the teams below them are just going to select the other 2 based on their individual needs. But the Magic have the decision to either take Chet and see if he's going to answer the questions that are posed to him with his size. They're going to take Jabari Smith, as you said, or if they're going to take Paulo Banchero. And I think after that, it kind of falls in line. Like if Chet is off the board, then you're probably going to take Jabari Smith and then Paulo. Or if Paulo is off the board, it's going to be Jabari and the Chet. I feel like it's going to be up to the Magic and what their pick is for the other two top 3 picks to really make a decision on who they're going to take.
Yeah, in my opinion, I mean, based on just like the whole rosters right now, I think that the Magic should take Chet because you have Chet and Jalen Suggs, and I think they would have good chemistry. But I think overall, Chet Holmgren needs to like get more muscle. I mean, I just because like he's big, right? So he's like what 7 feet tall, maybe a little bit taller. So like you have a 7-foot guy who can body people. That's already a great team, and I think that's a winning team. So, but then with the Rockets, who have the 3rd pick, I think that Paul Banchero could fit in great with that team because you have Jalen Green, you have Kevin Porter Jr., and then you bring in Banchero. So you already have like Jalen Green, you have Kevin Porter, you have Banchero, you have Christian Wood, and then you have some other guys in that. Who's a center? I don't remember the centers, but I remember there's somebody decent. So the Rockets can have like a decent team who could possibly go on to the play-in, but again, it's too early to say because we're still in.
Well,
Yeah, so we're still. Yeah, exactly. So we're still in this season. So it's too early to tell because you don't know the trades that are going to happen next season. Like there's so many rumors on who could go where. You know, the Jazz have their big, Quinn Snyder stepping down. And then you have, Rudy Gobert who might go to like a place. I think actually Toronto is his like one of the top teams to maybe get him. But Donovan Mitchell. So I think there's so many teams who have problems. There's so many teams who are doing well. So, but I think, guys, with that information, we can close out today's podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thanks, Mitch, for coming on the podcast. And before we end, make sure to subscribe on YouTube. And thanks for the support on there and on Instagram. We're going to be doing our weekly posts. And with that being said, me and Ekamresh will see you guys next time.